open us in prayer?
Sure.
Awesome.
Hey guys, welcome to the Church Safety Guys Facebook and live broadcast Sunday night. I am James, and I am joined by Paul over on this side. So if you're just joining us, thanks for hanging out with us tonight. We're having a little bit of technical issues with bringing Jim Howard in. Jim is actually going to be joining us here shortly, and we'll get rolling. So for starters this evening, Paul's going to go ahead and open us up in prayer, and then we'll cover our normal housekeeping stuff and jump right into it. So.
Dear Heavenly Father, Lord God, we humble ourselves before you. We thank you for an opportunity to talk about topics that are near and dear our hearts. And we ask for safety over our church bodies as here in the next weeks as we go back to business as usual, that we could go back closer to you and sharper and ready for business, ready to serve. And I lift up tonight's broadcast to you that there'd be no glitches, no bumps, no problems. Jim would be able to connect. And we always enjoy when we have him on, Lord God. So we lift this evening up to you, and we give you the honor and the glory. We want to do it for your glory. In your Son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. So if you are joining us, I'm just working on in the background here, trying to get, for some reason,
he has disappeared. I'm all by myself. So while he's doing that, there's going to be a link down here in just a minute I'm working on that will get us, this link will get us set up here where we can see your name. So click the StreamYard link when you see it appear, and we're going to get this broadcast started. It's always fun when you have technical difficulties. So Jim should be joining us shortly, and James will be back on here in just a minute. So anyway, while he's doing that in the background, some of you guys may have noticed this in the background. Let's see if I can get this in the camera here where we can see it. This is a great book. I have not actually been in this book much, but Simon Ozomo has got an incredible setup over here at Worship Security. And then here in a minute, we're going to thank our sponsors. And it's exciting to see what the Lord's doing here. I'm going to throw some stuff on the floor. James and I were talking about the fact it just blows us away what God has been doing with church, with church safety and security, with all of a sudden we're the church safety guys and getting invitations to different things, and God's opening up doors, and there's opportunities for partnerships, and there's going to be training and materials. We're partnering with people to just have incredible training. We're getting to meet some people that I never would have thought we would have been able to meet, and become friends with people I never would have thought we would have been friends with. So it has been an amazing, mind-blowing experience, and I have a feeling it's just the beginning. There's still a pretty good chance down the road that we'll have a podcast. And as a guy who's really getting into podcasts, it's exciting to me because I think we really need to get church safety and security being talked about in the mainstream. And it's one thing to be able to talk about it in a group like this. And there's a time and a place for talking about things behind closed doors. And I think there's things for operational security, OPSEC, that we don't really want to talk about, out in public. You are back.
I am. All right. Sorry about that. So real quick, our broadcast this month for the month of March is actually sponsored by Trinity Security Allies. And I have, I apologize for that delay. We had it set up a little bit different, and I'm not sure exactly what happened with if it was my computer or StreamYard, but I have Jim in the background here. So I'll be bringing him in here shortly. But just to remind you folks that are watching, a few housekeeping things. If you have the opportunity to go over to YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube channel, we have regular videos that we post there, and it's very easy to share those. So if we talk about a particular topic, you can grab those and share them with your church and that sort of thing. So the other thing real quick is until April 12th, if you have a chance to go to check out our new website, churchsafetyguys.com, And if you register onto our email database, your name will actually be put in for a drawing on this book, which is Countering the Mass Shooter Threat. And then right now we're putting together some great sponsorships with different groups across the U.S. and we're hoping to continue to offer resources. Just this past week, we partnered with Rescue Essentials, and so their information is going on our website soon. But if you use our link to purchase stuff through them, medical products and that sort of thing, they donate a percentage of that back to our operational expense for the church safety guys. So that's a good thing. And shortly we'll actually they're going to start sending us products to do reviews on for you guys. And they're also actually going to send us a special discount coupon that we can pass on to the folks that watch the Church Safety Guys channel and that sort of thing. So lots of great things coming up. And I'm just trying to go through some of the notes I have. So tonight we want to talk about, originally we usually try and schedule out our broadcast topics about a month out. And that way we can connect with individuals and kind of chat about different topics and kind of have a little bit more continuity with what we share with you guys. And so originally this episode had been basically how to have a successful Easter experience. Now, obviously, when we planned this out, things weren't quite as bleak and foreboding with the quarantine stuff as they are now. And I try not to make light of it. I know it's important. The president announced today that they want an extra 2 weeks, I believe, added to the stay home thing, pushing it back to April 30th. So I think that's going to be kind of interesting. But we talked about it and we said, really, when we talk about Easter, a lot of the items that we do for Easter, we would do for large events anyway. We just kind of put the Easter title on it. So we wanted to go ahead and talk about some of that tonight. And I'm going to go ahead and bring Jim in here to join us. So, hey, Jim, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can. Can you, Paul?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I'm using a different computer tonight, so I don't know if that was a part of the problem, but I'm here.
Cool.
Nice.
All right. So, I passed on to a couple of people. I wrote a little, a little pamphlet on 5 things to have a successful Easter event. And like I just said, and we kind of talked about it a little bit last week, Jim, before you went off, that we still wanted to do the Easter topic because really we're highlighting a holiday or activity, but the stuff that we talk about for large events, we can still talk about. It's not like exclusively to Easter preparation. But one of the things that Paul and I were talking about earlier tonight, which I think is kind of interesting, is that as much as dates keep getting pushed back for the COVID-19 and the virus and everything, I'm really wondering if we're going to see when the physical church comes back together. I'm really wondering if we're going to see an increase in folks going to church, either out of trying to get back to the normal for them or folks that are grateful that God's protected them and kept them safe or worked in their lives. And so I kind of think that, we're going to see, even though it may not be, an actual Easter event, I think a lot of churches will come in and will kind of set up something similar to that out of praise and worship. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I agree with you 100%. And what I would take you back to is the Sunday after 9/11. Churches were packed. I mean, if you can remember, I mean, everybody showed up to go to church that Sunday. just because of the events and everything that was going on and praying for our country and all that stuff like that.
Mhm.
So here we have an opportunity because, I mean, I don't know what your church did today, but ours was online. We had a Zoom meeting afterwards. If I have to go to one Zoom, I do, but it's a good tool. Trust me, we're going to be using it for training and stuff like that. But I think that we're going to see huge crowds. I mean, I am going to prepare for a huge crowd. I'm going to do a couple of different things than I would on a normal Sunday, but it's just beefing up some of the positions. I'm not going to change how we address things, but especially our outside rovers. I think that that's very important. The more we study these shootings, they start outside, and so if you don't have anybody that can warn you of what is going on outside, then it's going to get into your church. So I think that instead of where we normally have two guys, one walking, one riding in a golf cart, I'll probably have three, maybe even a couple more, just looking at the perimeter, making sure that we're just keeping an eye on the perimeter.
Sure. So what would you say besides outside? What do you think are some of the hot topics for just ensuring success of that type of event?
Well, there's going to be a lot of people that you're not going to know. So this
Right.
is one of these things where what we do, we train on threat profiling, which is the combat profiling that we uses, or left to bang. I mean, that's what we train on, and what we're looking for characteristics of somebody that is nervous if they walk in. If somebody walks in with a backpack that we met before, we're going to try to get to know them. We're going to try to get to talk to them for a second. We're put in a loving Christian way, but anybody that walks into our church, we only allow them to come into two entrances in our church. We direct you're either, and what the other thing that we try to do is that we have a first-time visitor side, to where if you're a first-time visitor, we try to get you to park on one side of the church, and our members know to come in on the other side of the church. And so this way, we're just keeping an eye out on people that we've never seen before. I mean, I think that's very important. You really have to start, and of course, people might get a little upset here, but you really have to start profiling people when they come in through the door. We profile every day. I have two girls. Little boy comes on my front yard. I'm profiling him. Hands pulled. Does he have a job? What's his 401k? I mean, yeah. I'm cleaning guns. So I tell them, I was a detective. I got 56 ways of making you disappear, and nobody ever know what happened to you. I mean, I just tell them off the.
For sure.
So I mean, we have to be watching the crowds. It's just exactly the same thing Secret Service does too, and parades and things like that. We really need to be looking for those that stand out. Easter Sunday, everybody normally puts on their best. They come in, they look nice. We're come as you are. So they put on their cleanest T-shirt, and come in. But you're watching for those that may come in into disguise, like the white settlement. The guy may come in and be completely nervous the whole time, looking like he's about to have a mental breakdown. I want to talk to that guy. I want to figure out if there is an issue or if he's just nervous, and why he's nervous. I tell people within 2 minutes to come with somebody, you can start to tell they're, something's either right or wrong. It's really that easy.
Sure. And that's one of the things that I do often. And I encourage my folks to do. If for some reason, if a question mark is raised based on someone's actions or activities, often people will come to me and say, well, that person over there is kind of acting weird. And I'll say, well, did you talk to them? Did you go up to them? Did you ask them how they're doing? If you've never seen them before and they're odd or strange to you, what is your level of engagement with them? And often I'm not surprised when I get the response back, well, I didn't talk to him. And I'll say, okay, well, the best way to make somebody feel at ease normally, right, is to go up to him and talk to him. And if you've never seen him before, that doesn't mean that that's their first time to the church, but it could be, right? So, often I'll go up to him, afterwards, and I'll just say, hey, my name's James, I'll shake their hand. Well, after social distancing, I may not do the handshake anymore.
Yeah. Hey,
yeah, right, Paul.
Yeah.
For the Trekkie fans out there, but that might be a good way. But we had a gentleman that's been going to the church for years, our church for years, and he kind of made folks uncomfortable because I think he was a little slow, and so and kind of awkward socially, and so at one point I'm like, I just walked up to him and I said, hi, I'm James, shook his hand. I said, what's your name? And he told me, and I had enough of a conversation, to understand and realize that he wasn't intentionally being awkward, that there were several other reasons there. And, obviously I don't want to get into his backstory, but I think a lot of times we almost put up a barrier, or we can put up a barrier and think, well, I don't want to go talk to that person because they potentially look like a threat, when, realistically, if we go up to the person and talk to them, then, by customer servicing them or greeting them, that can eliminate a lot of that person's, really kind of derail some of their thought process with what they're doing.
I want to jump in on that because that's a great point. If you've got people in the parking lot and they're motioning people through and they're waving at people, when I do the parking lot, I jazz hands people and I get silly. Some people stare at you funny. Some people get into it. Some people just kind of glance at you. But if you've seen them in the parking lot and you've got people that have eyes on, you've got that third layer. And then by the time they get to the doors, they've been greeted by a door greeter that may or may not have any training, but welcomed them. And then, by the time they're inside, before they even get sat down, somebody else has said hello to them. They either go, wow, this is the most friendly church I've ever been to, or they go, they're on to me because of paranoia with pre-attack paranoia. They're like, they know, and they're either going to decide you're a hard target, right? And I forget who I first heard that from. And it was a conversation that was related around this group and my addled mind. But when I heard it put that way, that you are, you're very intentional, you're very friendly. Aggressive friendliness is the word I'm reaching for, the phrase I'm reaching for. When I first heard that, I went, oh yeah, I totally like that, because people are going to come up and they're either going to know that they're welcome and they're going to come back to you and ask questions. Where's the bathroom? Where's the nursery? Do you have a welcome package, a little packet or something? I'd love to visit with one of the pastors. They're either going to make you a point of contact, and if you're part of the safety team, hallelujah. Or they're going to go, oh, crud, I don't want anything to do with this place. And they're going to beat feet and get out of there. And that's a win-win.
I mean, we had it at one time, and we're working to get back to this. One of our ministries was outside parking. And they would, so people would come in. They would ask them, is this your first time there? Well, this gives us an opportunity right off the bat to take a look at them. And if it was, and we'd say, hey, we got a spot for you over here to park. So they'd go over here and park. Now they get out of the car and there's already somebody there to greet them because it's supposed to be their first time there, And so before they get into the church, they've been touched 3 times. And I can tell you, it's funny. I was having a conversation with Simon last week, and we were talking about Tina Rowe. She was one of the first ones when I got started on this that I got some of her material. And she made a really good point about your ushers and your greeters, because see, a lot of times churches don't want you to train them too. No, they need to be trained also. They're your first line of defense. They're your intelligence group that's out here. Your ushers, greeters, you have a lady that is in charge of them that knows everything about everybody in the church. She's the one that you want to be able to get information from when somebody comes in that she sees, that she'll go right over. Lorna Powers, if she happens to hear me tonight, I hope she knows I'm speaking highly of her, because she's not afraid to talk to anybody. You walk
Sure.
in and look at your watch twice, she's over talking to you because she's figuring you're looking for somebody, waiting for somebody, or you got a bomb that's about to go off and she wants to make sure, she tells me about it. But yeah, we have to be this way. I love it. The aggressive friendliness. I say that all the time too. We have to be aggressive. I want to look on your Facebook page and see that you have a 5, and like 3 to 10 of the people are saying this is the friendliest church I've ever been to. Warm, welcoming, made me feel comfortable, made me feel like it was a home. That's what you want to. I mean, isn't that what we're supposed to do? We walk into too many churches that people are so just, don't talk to me. I'm afraid I might have to start up a conversation with you. You might talk to me about something about your life. We got a guy that comes into our church that wears a Corvette jacket, and he's very animated in his praise. Nobody would go talk to him. So finally, I happened to be around him one day and just walked over and started carrying. I just walked up to him and said, "Hey, do you have a Corvette, or do you just like this jacket?" And we started a conversation. So look, guys like us, we can look at somebody and figure out something right away to go and talk to them about. We'll figure it out before we get there. We'll have a question to ask before we even start saying, get to them. And, like I said, the guy standing there looking at his watch and walking back and forth to the different entrances, go up to him and say, "Hey, can I, it looks like you're looking for somebody. Is it somebody here that I might know that he'd be in the worship center waiting for you, looking for a watch?" It's simple things. It used to crack me up. New officers on the street would go, you'd go talk to people on the street. And they'd go, "Well, I don't have any, they're not doing anything wrong." You can't go up to them and go, "Hey, today's a great day, isn't it? Isn't the weather wonderful?" I mean, really? And so once they got past that, "Oh, I can do that." Yeah. I mean, then then it started other things, just started, "Hey, I've been in this area before, church before. We're a big church. We have 3 services. They may come to a different service than I do, but at least you're feeling uncomfortable about that person. That makes you feel uncomfortable." And James, what you said is absolutely right. If you're you're going to have people inside your church that other people feel uncomfortable around. And what you really need to do is get engaged with those. You really truly need to know the potential problems, because people that aren't on their medication, people that have something that causes them to kind of like flip on it, you need to be aware of that. Because if somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, I got this guy over here," and you walk over and look, "I know who it is. That's just the way he is. It's okay." Instead of now everybody's all hyped up, worried about this guy.
Well, and that's an interesting point too, Jim, that you bring up that I want to go back on real quick. You commented people coming up to you and asking you about it. So from a safety perspective, those that are in charge of the safety team really need to know who is who. So what kind of pops into my head with that is, you know what, not only do I need to know who is who, but I also need to be calm and collected enough to have a conversation with someone else when they come over to me and say, "Well, I'm really worried about that guy." I need to have my ducks in a row, so to speak, to be able to say, "Yeah, you know what? I talked to him and he's okay." So because a lot of what we do is public relations. And so when we're talking to the folks that might be concerned, we have to show a level of calmness to them as well, so that they understand, that, okay, if I go and I'm emotionally charged, or, I'm energetic and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this person's coming in." I feel like a Muppet right now waving my hands, but you know what I'm saying? A calm answer turns away wrath. So if I talk to that person calmly, but then also talk to the person that has concerns calmly, they'll sense the calmness from me and not get as excited. So Paul, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I love what you guys are talking about because hysteria is contagious, but so is a calm demeanor. And if we can, the calmer we can stay, the better. We had a real hot potato tossed to us by our pastoral team years ago, and there had been a death in our church, a very tragic situation, and family was coming in from all over the country, and they didn't like each other, and there was a powder keg of a situation with a custody situation, and one part of the family thought the kids should go over here and another part thought they should go over there, and this is completely a civil issue. This has nothing to do with our church, but we were asked to provide security for the dinner after the funeral and to actually provide security before that on site at the funeral. And so that got ticklish. And I actually brought in a friend of mine who was off duty law enforcement. And as a favor to me, he came in and he walked with us. And we were very overt. I mean, we radioed up. I told my guys, I said, I need you to look like robots. I want you to be very overt that you're security. And when it was all over and the custody situation was decided by the kids, they wanted to stay where they were at. No need for a big custody battle. The volatile nature of it, you could feel it in the air. And this guy came up to me and he said, "Hey, I want to thank you." And he pointed at several of my guys that were there pulling security. And he said, "I want to thank you guys for being here." He said, "Because I can tell you the fact that you guys were here allowed cooler heads to prevail. And we had no idea what the kids wanted. And if you guys hadn't been here, it probably would have been a fist fight." And so to kind of encapsulate,
and that is no, go ahead, please. I'm sorry.
Oh, on my end, I heard another person speak, so I stopped. Well, anyway, so it really was a great opportunity for, as you guys are talking about, actually walking up and engaging people in conversation. Oh, you guys came in from Georgia. You guys came in from over here. You guys are out of Alabama. What was the drive like? And getting people to talk and show them that you cared about them. Hey, if you guys need a place to change, we got a place over here. We got a bathroom over here. Do you have any special needs with anybody in your group? Anybody have any health conditions we should know about? And so we could show Christ's love, but at the same time, we were a very overt presence. And it was able to diffuse things enough by the grace of God that the kids were able to say, "Hey, I don't want to go over there. I want to stay over here." And
Right.
I love how that aggressive friendliness, competence, professional, moving around and being part of things. We made sure they knew that there was a security presence, and it paid off.
I think
Sure.
one of the
I wanted to jump on. James, listen about what you said.
Yeah, go ahead.
And it goes along with the same thing Paul's talking about being calm and also cooler heads prevailing. I was telling you the story last week of Charles Deere, the guy that was circumventing the custody of his kids, eventually got charged with murder on our campus. The first time I saw him, he was standing outside one of the side doors smoking a cigarette. And I thought he might be with the band. Our band, the guys sometimes step outside, they're smokers, and smoke a cigarette. So when I went in, I saw him come in and I went straight to him and introduced myself. And we were talking, and the guy that was the custodian for the church, the maintenance guy for the church, he kept this way, and he knew everybody and level-headed. Never had a harsh word to say about anybody. And I looked at him and I said, "Frank, do you know that guy?" He goes, "Charles, yeah, I know him. He freaks me out, gives me the creeps every time I'm around him." And when that was said, I knew we had an issue. That right there told me that I need to be paying attention to this guy. Because if you hear from somebody who's normally, doesn't have a bad thing to say about anybody, then that's you really need to pay attention to it. Don't slide off. And going back to what Paul said, when we bring guys on the safety team, as well as I do, some of them think that they're law enforcement. They're not. This is a different position. This is a totally different position. And too many of them that we've run into, and I've got one that's a team leader with our guys right now, that, like I said, if he sees the guy looking at his watch and pacing the floor, he thinks this guy's a bomber. And it's a big building and people coming in all the time, and somebody, is there something I can help you with? You seem like you're a little lost. Just go. But it's like he comes to me and goes, "Oh, this guy's been walking forth. I don't know. I think he's got a bomb." Really? He's got tight jeans on and a tight T-shirt. I don't see a mom, you know.
Well, and what I think is funny about that, you know, from what Paul said, I think honestly, I think kids can sense a lot of that too. Like I've noticed, like when we've gone and checked out churches and that sort of thing, you know, I don't discount what my kids tell me. So afterwards, you know, I ask them pointed questions about, you know, how was your teacher? You know, how did you feel your teacher handled the situation and that sort of thing? And I think, honestly, I think kids are a good barometer of, you know, emotions. And because if someone is questionable and they're involved, and this might be more for folks inside, because, you know, we keep an eye on people that are serving too, as much as outside. But from that standpoint, if an adult is teaching a Sunday school class, they're going to be more relaxed about it. So for us, you know, asking our kids or talking to the kids and saying, so what, you know, was it normal? You know, asking open-ended questions, I think sometimes can be overlooked too. But
I want to do something with the kids when you get finished.
Yeah, go ahead. Your stream is about 5 or 10 seconds behind us.
Okay. I'm working on that. Amazon is slow as far as equipment for, you know, live streaming and stuff right now, but I'm working on that, you know.
Sure.
We, in our teaching of the combat profiling, threat profiling, we teach a thing called prox, and there's a thing called a proxemic push. And that is when somebody feels uncomfortable, they move away from that person, okay? Watch kids when somebody first comes to your church, because if the father turns and looks at them in a strange way and you see that child cower down or push off that person, that's an alert right there. That's telling me this guy might be a little, you know, little too forceful on his, you know, discipline and things like that. But that goes back to what you're saying about kids being real hunters that we use a lot when we're talking to people. I got a quick one on that. This is just a good. I was at a mall with my youngest daughter, and we had just had dinner, and a woman walked up to us with a child standing, I mean, like 13 years old. And she was pregnant. The woman was pregnant. And she looked at me and she said, you know, some spare change. It flipped us. My daughter was standing here. And I don't like strangers been talking to me. You know, I mean, I became instantly protective of my daughter. I don't know you, and you've come up and asked me for money. I just really just kind of, you know, looked at her and I said, no, I don't. Sorry, and kind of like walked away. Well, as I walked away, I started thinking about it, and I said to myself, that really wasn't a good teaching moment for my daughter. She was like, I think she was 11 during this time frame. So I looked at her and I said, listen, we were headed to the bathrooms. I said, when we get out of the bathrooms, I'm going to go back and I'm going to buy that dinner for her and her daughter. And she stopped me and she goes, why? And I was like, what? You know, I said, why? She said the shoes that she had on her feet were $35 shoes. She had a shirt on that was some name brand shirt that she recognized. And she was like, this little kid was dressed better than me. And so, you know, there's got to be some money here, you know, in this. And I was like, gosh, she noticed that quick. I mean, just that quick. She sized that up. And then she goes, and plus she's pregnant again and she's asking for money. And I'm like, okay, calm down. You've been around your dad too long. So I said, I'm still coming back and food. But when we came back, they were gone. But it's just like you said, children do see things, and we need to pay attention when they feel uncomfortable. Open-ended questions for them, let them talk about it. Because so many times, we let it go in one ear and out the other, and don't pay attention. So it's a great point.
Yeah, they're.
I'm gonna say when I'm finished.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I said, I'm going to say over when I'm finished.
Okay. No, you're absolutely right. They can sense a different level of emotion, and I think often they also are very honest. I've found my 8-year-old son is often more honest than tactful on different occasions. So from that standpoint, yeah, absolutely.
I think there's also with it, there's kind of a discernment. Some people have a sixth sense about people. And like you guys are talking about, there's kids are more likely to be brutally honest. Why did you dress like that? Why are you acting like that? That person freaks me out. And they don't hide it behind social norms. But I've actually encountered kids that freaked out about somebody. And there's a lady, and I'm going to step into the spiritual for a moment, but I was working with a lady one day that this little boy spooked around her, and come to find out she had a lot of very major spiritual problems. And I'm going to step over into the really spiritual for a moment. She had some seriously demonic problems, and he took one look at her face and he goes, monster, and like recoiled and she's like, I don't know why, but kids do this with me sometimes. And she wasn't a child molester. I could tell you the whole story, but it's long and drawn out. And she's a believer now, and God has completely changed her life. And you could see a darkness on her that this little boy was like, boom, and he saw it immediately. And I've even seen it with my own son. And I've always been this guy that I can feel certain things like that, but I've watched little kids see it, like literally recoil from people and environments, and they know things, and to like both directions you guys are talking about. I think there's a discernment, but I think there's also sometimes they don't have that social norm that they covered up and go, oh, I shouldn't say anything. And I saw my son do that when he was 3 or 4 years old. I was airing up a tire and I had the door open on the side of my Jeep, and I felt something over my shoulder. And my son looked over and he goes, oh, daddy, monster. And he pointed, totally separate story from the other one. And I looked, and there was a gal that had pulled up, and I had felt her looking at me. And he did a double take and looked at her and commented. And I turned and looked at her. When I made eye contact, I could feel this gal was batting for the other team. I mean, there was definitely a satanic thing going on there. And that is a blessing when you have people on your team that they can identify the doesn't look rights of the physical. And ladies are great at that. I mean, I don't know how many times I've been talking to people, and if you can train a lady, and Jim and James, you're both going to agree with me on this. If you can train a lady to look for the doesn't look rights, they're usually better at it than we are, because they notice details we don't, like your daughter going, she was dressed pretty well to be looking for a handout. We're usually really good at this, right? And then we definitely shouldn't ignore how kids respond to things. I remember telling my mom on 3 different occasions before I hit 10 years old, 11 years old, I actually pointed out child molesters to my mom 3 different times, and I was never wrong. And actually one of them was he was a music minister, and he was later proven to be a child molester. And my mom got to the point, by the time after the second one, if I said something about like that, she was like, okay, so we're going to watch this person. So I think there's a spiritual and a physical element to that. But anyway.
Like I said, I think that we don't listen to our children, and that is something that we really need to be paying attention to. And it's other people inside. When I teach a class at the academy, I tell the guys and gals that when you're talking about women, I tell the guys and the officers, the new officers, the cadets, so when you get a district, when you get your card district, find the nosiest person in your district. It's going to be a little old lady, probably in the 70s and 80s, but she's going to know everything about everybody. I caught a bank robber by doing a knock and talk, going through the neighborhood, knocking. I had a picture before the guy cased the place out, and we had a picture before the robbery, and then, of course, when he did the robbery. But we were going through the neighborhood, and we were asking people if they knew this guy, because, we need to get in touch with him, family emergency, all these things like this, anything you want to say to him. And sure enough, this little lady that knew everybody that was good, because I was going up to the door, and on the door, she was across the street. She yelled at me and said, they're not home. And I turned around and looked at her, and the officer that was with me, I looked at him and I said, she knows who this guy is. And the other side of the street. And as I went to go to the next house, she goes, they're not home either. I mean, she's yelling it, you know? And I was watching the lieutenant, and sure enough, he walked up and showed her the picture, and she did like, come here, and took him into her duplex she was living at. And she said, he lives right behind us here. I mean, so when we have people that some people, you know, like, oh, they're crazy. Oh, they don't know what they're talking about. It goes back to what Paul's talking about. Sometimes these people have a gift, and we need to listen to that gift, and we should store it away somewhere, because later on that little thing that they pointed out to us, like your son saying, like your mom, like, you know, you were talking about when you were little, when you were saying there's a sexual molester, a monster. Why did they feel that way? These are things that people see, and trust me, I just believe that kids have such, you know, at that moment in time in their life, God is just so around them till they become to the age of accountability. I think that God is just all over them, and they see, he protects them and he shows them things. And I just totally agree. We need to be paying attention to people who sometimes seem out there, you know, and just listen to what they have to say, because you never could be that little lady that points out that bank robber for you.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
Over. So I want to go back just for a second. You had mentioned earlier talking to ushers, Jim, and kind of evaluating your resources. And one of the things that I like to do before a large event or even Easter is to kind of connect with those ministry teams and have a quick conversation with them. And it doesn't have to be like a crazy long conversation, but just where they know that we're available, we're approachable. And okay, if you see something, you know, say something, but also, you know, look for odd things, let us know in case we miss something, because I like to kind of prepare them in a sense and get them in a certain awareness mindset that, okay, this service runs a little bit different than, you know, or maybe it's going to run a little bit different because we're going to have more people and, you know, we need to pay attention. The other thing that I kind of like to do on occasion is I like to chat with the church leadership about giving and tithes, because often as the outline of the service changes, a lot of times when the giving is done or received changes as well. And we've gotten to a place now in the past where it's been adjusted and we didn't realize it. We didn't know about that. And all of a sudden we have, you know, 1,500 people walking past where our ushers are trying to scramble to put the money in a bag and get it locked up and all this stuff. So I always like to kind of reach out to some of the different ministries and just say, okay, you know, walk me through, especially the leadership, walk me through what your outline is for this service, for this day. And then, okay, what are the other ministry teams that are involved? And I kind of make it a point to go check in with them and make sure that we're on the same page as far as response and what we're going to be doing and watching for and that sort of thing. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a great idea. To add to it, I make it a point, church or whoever the team is that day, if I'm not there, that before it starts, that you need to go and shake hands with every greeter and usher that is there, just to kind of give them the present, and they know who we are. So make sure that I go and talk to every single one of them. I've gotten to know the guys and their wives. I get hugs. Well, I used to get hugs. Now we'll have to do you know, they were pretty smart on that. Live long and prosper and never touched each other. There's something there. But, you know, to let them know that you're there and talk to them. It makes them feel like, you know, so many times ushers and greeters are just kind of like people don't think of them as being important in the church, and they're huge. I mean, if they're not helping people that some don't want help, it's chaos. And so I make it a point, and I think it like I said, we train them also. When I there are so many times they come to me and say, "Hey, did you see this guy? We just saw him, and we sat him down over here." And I said, "We're already, we saw him." I've had them turn around and look at me and go, "Oh, too. Thank you very much," because which means you're doing what I need you to do, paying attention. But it is they're so important in this. We can't be flying blind. If we don't have the intelligence, that's exactly what we're doing, is flying blind. So they're part of my safety team. I deputize them every time we get started.
I love that. I love the concept of deputizing people and using them for intelligence gathering. If you don't have people that are bringing information to you, like I remember years ago, we had a homeless guy that came to our church, and a group of ladies, before it was over, like 4 ladies in a 5-minute period came to me and said, "Okay, this guy is like really freaking us out." And I think he was innocent enough. He was just kind of socially awkward. He wasn't around a lot of people. He was very homeless. He smelled bad. It was obvious he hadn't bathed. And he was not following certain social norms. He was having too personal of a conversation with people he'd never met. And so I went and sat with him. He sat at the very back of the room. I've talked about him before, and we had a great conversation about God. I pointed to certain things in the church that he might need to know about, and I made myself aggressively friendly before I knew that term existed. And it made people feel so comfortable. And I got so many comments and compliments from people, men and women, when it was over, saying, "Thank you for going and sitting with him, because he was really weirding us out. And if he needed me, I was right there. And if the congregation needed me to be there for him, I was right there." And I wouldn't have known about the guy right off the bat, because at that point, we didn't have all our doors locked at a certain point, and he came in through another set of doors, and all these people had brought me this information, and I knew I had a doesn't look right before I ever saw him.
Right. And we really, really, really need to train to be looking for that doesn't look right. It's just, I can't stress that enough. So many walk into a church and they don't want their ushers and greeters there because they're like, "Well, we don't want to scare them." They don't want to be scared either, but it's nice to know that there's a safety team there that's to help them out if they come across something. I mean, Paul, you just said it. They came to you and told you about it. What if they didn't know that you had a safety team? What would they do? Find the pastor? He's got a lot of mind at this moment in time. Amen. "Pastor, we think you should come talk to this guy because he's really weird." That's not what he's supposed to be doing. He's supposed to be getting ready to get up on the stage and start teaching us. So it's very important that they do know who you are. They feel comfortable with you there. Shoot, we get so many compliments. I tell my team all the time when I write on emails, I tell them, "Hey, one of the biggest groups that we've had, biggest crowds that we've had." And I cannot tell you how many people came up and said, "We're so happy y'all are here because we feel comfortable that we can do what we need to do, and y'all just handle the rest." So it's great that we teach them what to do.
I think honestly, one of the pieces here too is just the planning aspect of it, and that's kind of the thread that runs through a lot of this is taking the time. And for those churches maybe that are a little bit smaller or maybe have smaller teams, still the idea of sitting down and writing out, okay, here's my plan. I need to chat with these folks. I need to touch base with these folks, and I need to look outside. I need to observe the church campus, see what's new, what's different. I mean, it's not complicated. There's a lot of simple things, but the idea of giving yourself enough time to kind of go through and make those connections, I've learned is probably one of the most invaluable things, because if I rush or I'm not prepared myself, then the attitude or the emotion that I'm going to give off is not one of settling that things are organized and in control. So if I'm running around at the last minute and trying to touch base with this person on this team and this person on that team, and I'm finding out, then that doesn't allow me to give, as inside, outside, kind of public relations person, that doesn't give me enough time to, to make sure that every question I have is answered. So my I guess exhortation to the safety team folks that are listening to this or are out there and saying, well, your church is a lot bigger than ours. It might be, but having a casual conversation and running through those things ahead of time will save you a lot of stress and anguish. I mean, for us, I think it was 2 years ago, they decided to change the offering. And again, we completely changed it and changed the time and service. And that was one thing that I had no knowledge on. No one told me, but at the same time, I didn't go look for that information to see if the service was, the same as it was every other Sunday. And so after that, I said, okay, that was a train wreck and a nightmare. So, let's, that encouraged me to say, okay, every service now on Friday or Saturday night, I pull up, I have access to, the service outline and notes and that sort of thing. And I kind of go through it to see, if something's changing or if it's staying the same or if something's out of place. So.
Well, and that's a good point on something else. You just brought up something that I stress all the time. The safety ministry needs to be just as important as any other ministry in the church. Mm-hmm. And I stress this over and over again to my leadership, that if you're going to change something, I need to know, because I want my guys to be caught flat. To give examples, when the Corona before we canceled church, we had the offering, the communion, where people came down and picked up their own cups. Mm-hmm. That right there created another, situation that we need to make sure that we were prepared for. So I had 2 extra guys down front because they all walked in front to get the communion wine and wafer. So I needed to know that so that I could advise them and we could set up for it. We had a week where we asked everybody to come down front that wanted prayer. Okay, I don't know if you've ever seen the video of the pastor that had everybody come down for prayer and the guy punched him. So, yeah. It's out there. He nailed it. And if video, somebody should have been on that guy. That guy's facial expression was showing it all. So when he was angry. Yeah. And so when the church gets ready to have something different, they need to be calling you and advising you of it, instead of you like having to go and look and going, oh my gosh, this is going on. Because like I said, we put it one time and I brought it up to them because this guy just come running down and we were getting ready to tackle him, and he was a part of a little skit that they were putting on. Really? Yeah. And so, you can't, we're going to be right in the middle of it. There's going to be a foul. So they really have to understand that we had on one Christmas that they were going to spark. They had a grinding iron, and they were hitting an anvil, a steel anvil, and shooting sparks across the stage. And they were going, "Hey, we're okay with this." We said, "Do you have a fire extinguisher here just in case something catches on?" No, these sparks only. No, they went all the way across the stage. We had a fire marshal that works. He lost his mind when he saw it. So they truly need to let you know. Oh, he was there every service with the fire extinguisher ready to go. They need to let you know when these things are going to change. To that habit. This is the way the church is going to run. We're going to sing a couple of songs. Pastor's going to get up and do, the offering, and then he preaches, and then it's all over with. Well, guess what? They change it on us, and the offering's until the end, and we're tough on the offering. Trust me, I've got guys all over that offering because we want to make sure nobody gets hurt, and it gets from point A to point B, which is what they used to tell me. So, go ahead, Paul.
Well, I love what you're saying there, because what you're not saying is you want to control the service. You want God to move. You want them to have the room to do it, but you want to be able to protect the people and the things as they go on. And I tried to stress that to some of my leadership, and they would like freak out, and they'd be like, well, you're just trying to control this thing. And I'm like, no. I just want to know if this thing's going to happen, then we can get out of the way and we can facilitate. And they used to do youth group float trips and not tell me. And I'm like, you're going to take 20, 25 kids on a creek for hours, and you're not going to have anybody with medical, and you're not going to have anybody that can protect them. And, so, yeah, it took, and it as A-type personalities who are protective sheepdogs, it makes us want to pull our hair out. That may explain a lot, but it's something that we want to be there, not to control it, but to be there to mitigate the risk of it. And I think it's hard to express that to our church leadership.
And you brought up an interesting subject. You said that the youth go out on these things. We need to start preaching this, that a safety team member should be these trips. You pay for his way. We went to Atlanta to Passion. Mm-hmm. We've got 18-year-olds and 17-year-olds that think they're running the streets of Atlanta. There needs to be somebody there kind of paying attention to what's going on. And I just went to a church retreat that was it was our high school, and we were at a campsite, and we had people. It was a big site. So, we're out there looking for them because we need to make sure that we count all these kids. When you do have these going away trips, you're absolutely right, Paul. Somebody should be going along that has a little bit of a calm or breaks a leg or does something bizarre, and that's another.
Yeah, for sure. We've had, it's kind of interesting you say that, Jim, because we've gone through trial and errors of that, but we've had a few situations too where now a lot of when it's service related, if there's a change, the senior pastor will text me or let me know, what's going on. And even with the kids ministries, I work hand in hand with like the youth pastor and the family pastor. And if they take kids off campus, then we either have someone going as like a driver in a driving capacity, or a lot of times we'll take like a trauma bag, like one of our church bags with us. And depending on what they're doing, we did a lock-in a couple of months ago. And before the lock-in, we took the kids, actually the teens, we took to a trampoline park. And, 10 minutes into the trampoline park, one of the kids twisted her ankle. And so she was done, and her mom came and got her and that sort of thing. But, kids are kids. And I think honestly, for the church that, if you're a safety team leader or member and you express, hey, I should go, that's something to keep in mind. Because I know a lot of churches will push back and say, well, kids are kids and we got to let them have their fun and, and that sort of thing. But if you're there and you're prepared, that doesn't mean that, the kids are going to have less fun. If anything, it helps take some of the edge off of, well, what happens if something goes wrong? Because they know, like the pastor or the folks leading it know that you can, as a safety team member, step in and try and mitigate some of that and help things run smoothly. So that's something I always try and do. And I've always tried to have a good relationship with the different pastors over different areas for the sake of being able to go and say, okay, you know what, I'm going to do this lock-in with you, or I'm going to have somebody come and hang out with you guys that, knows a little bit of first aid, can help you, can kind of keep, because, we forget too that the kids or teens or whoever, they're focused on what's going on here, right? Kind of like in front of them. They're not focused on everything that's going on around what's going on here with their friends.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'd love to throw in a really quick, I don't know if it's quick. I don't know if there's anything I do that's quick when I'm talking, but I was trying to 20 years ago, and I'm in my early 40s now, to try to get our church to think about church safety. And we actually had a thing they called the River Rally, and it was a huge number of churches brought their kids in, and nobody was trying to keep tabs on teenage kids. And I'm like, and at that point I had been a teenage kid fairly recently, and I was like, we should have people watching these kids. And I was literally told I would patrol the park and kind of like a goalie and kick the kids back into play to keep kids from coupling off and disappearing and getting boys into girls' tents and vice versa. And we actually had a girl years later that she actually told our pastor that she had lost her virginity at that rally. And I was like, I had no help. People just told me I was ridiculous. And then I used to go to these kids retreats. They'd go to these concerts and spend the night in Tulsa or something. And I would have all the teenage boys in this room, and the door opened into the hotel room, and I put a pallet down and I slept against the door. And I had parents tell me later, they're like, "You don't trust our kids?" And I'm like, I don't trust a group of teenage boys. No, I don't. Well, I was asked not to go, literally. Now, this was a long time ago. I was asked not to go on the next one. And they found a boy on top of a girl making out with her in one of the girls' rooms. And this is a group of girls. All the girls left so they could make out. And one of the youth sponsors walked in and grabbed this kid and about flung him across the room. Now, no clothes had come off, but it was bad enough. And you have things like that. And then it got to the point that the people in charge of like our youth floats were like, "No, Buckner, we want you there." And I would get in a kayak, and they would be in canoes. And I had this one elder that would go get them, because invariably you'd have two girls that they would get in the same canoe, and they wanted to get as far away from the group as they could so they could flirt with guys. And they would get a half mile ahead. And I had this one elder that would go, "Buckner," and he'd motion me up next to me, go get him and beach him. And we had a couple of minor injuries on a float trip that I was able to help with. And then another time we actually had, and I got made fun of for it, but after the fact, people came up and apologized. It rained on us, and I was able to go up on the beach, help get the kids some shelter, start a couple of fires. Everybody was laughing before it was over. Everybody got warmed back up because they got chilled. We hopped in the canoes and we left. And it's funny because those people, once you prove a couple of times that, hey, maybe you're not stupid for wanting to be there, usually I started getting invites, but it was really hard to prime that pump. So I'm done. Over.
So we'll throw it back to you, Jim, if you want to add some stuff, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay. I did want to bring it back to Easter, and I wanted to talk about the outside one more time. I think it's very important. When we started doing the rover position outside, the guys not wanting to do it because they're out there by themselves. And so I pulled them up together and I said, "Listen, this is one of the reasons why I really want you to be doing this out here. Is that at Texas, at a church at Texas, family got out of their van, went inside the church, up inside the van, and they died." I said, "Not on our watch." So when you're out here riding around in the golf cart and you're driving down, in the parking lot, I want you to look inside these cars in a few seats and make sure that it's empty. Because we want to make sure that we're not, it doesn't happen when we're doing it. Now, the second thing, and I kind of touched base about that. Yeah, I touched base on it last week, and I pulled up the article. This was March 27, 2016. This was Bellevue Baptist Church in Memphis, Tennessee. 6,600 people that meet in their church. Okay. They had a guy that was walking across the parking lot who had a folder on his hip and a backpack. And one of the people out in the parking lot saw him and said, "Happy Easter, Christ is risen, glory to him." And the guy's response was, "Where's your balcony?" She immediately knew that this was wrong. Paul, this goes back to a lady. A lady knew that this was wrong, and contacted her team leader, who then contacted the safety team leader, and he stopped the guys. The guy walked in, started talking to him, got the gun away from him, doing something that I probably would have never done. But he tells, if you ever talk to him, he says you probably shouldn't have done it. But when he finally got to the back on him, he had a blackout 300 with magazines, loaded magazines, and extra ammunition inside the backpack. There was an estimated 4,500 people on campus that day. He said to the police after he was picked up, arrested, that people in society are a threat to him and that he must be vigilant. It does not matter the size of your church. It does not matter whether you're 50 people or 4,500. There are people out there that you have to watch out for. You need to start stopping them in the park. We're letting too many of them get into the church, and then it's too late. We got to stop them outside in the parking lot. So if I was going to tell anybody anything about Easter, I would say make sure you got somebody that's walking, riding around. Over.
No, that's you're spot on with that. And if anything, we have churches contact us and folks contact us all the time, and they'll message us and say, well, I don't have a very big team, but this is what I have. What would you do? And, with these resources and that sort of thing. And I know, and I speak for both Paul and I, but I know usually what we say, number one spot is put somebody out in the parking lot, checking cars, walking around, watching people, because, things happen, and one of, I'm not sure what the statistics are, but everything starts in the parking lot. And so, when in the past, when I've talked to other folks like, Carl Chin and Jimmy Meeks and a few others, everybody says the same thing. How many things are prevented or could have been prevented because you had someone out there watching. And, that's what I tell my folks, that it is, it's probably one of the most important positions, because honestly, if you can see something and stop it or address it before it comes into the building, you're just that much better off.
Yeah. And that's medical. That's missing kids. That's teenagers trying to slip out into the parking lot. That's kids trying to be truant and slip off of campus. That's somebody that fell and twisted their ankle. That's the kid left in the car. That's the car that catches on fire. That's the person stealing purses out of vehicles. You've got to have that third layer of protection. And I mean, Jim and James, I'm preaching to the choir, but I don't know how many times we stopped people in the parking lot with problems, whether it was kids trying to couple off, or we had kids trying to sneak out of church and hide in mom and dad's van, or literally we had a guy, one of my guys called me out the parking lot, and he's like, he didn't use the term, but he's like, I've got, it doesn't look right. And we had people going through trying door handles. And I just walked out and kind of looked at the guy and raised an eyebrow at the guy that was trying door handles. And he was like, he was gone. Over.
Yep. That was one of the scenarios that we did for the laser shot, was a kid checking cars. And we had intentionally added things to not notice, like he had a sweatshirt and a sweatshirt over his hands so that he could try the car doors, fingerprints and stuff like that. That's what we see. Nice. And so when they walked up to him and spoke to him, he was right in the midst of grabbing a hold of it. And then he pulled his sleeve up so his hand would, but we tell him, if you walk up and see somebody doing this, where they're concealing their hands, that's a felony in progress right there. So one of two things: calling the local law enforcement, getting away from this kid. Don't stand here and go toe to toe, because if you do, and this ends up getting shot. So, and he's very quick on it. He really is one of our best. So anyway.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for joining us again tonight, Jim. I always appreciate it. It's always fun having you on and being able to chat with you a bit.
Thanks for having me.
So we will go ahead. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm done.
Okay. I'll go ahead and pull him out. Yeah, I apologize for that. I think honestly, I think every church in the world and everybody is on streaming now. And so I think, if I had thought about it when the whole COVID stuff started, I probably would have started investing in some web programs like Zoom and because everybody's going nuts and crazy with it. But anyhow, it's always nice to have Jim come on. I love talking to him. So anyhow, just wrapping it up real quick. If you're seeing this later on, be sure to like and share. You can visit our YouTube channel and share discussions and videos that we do with your church. And that's our channel is churchsafetyguys.com. You can go in and subscribe to that. And then also feel free to check out our website. And if you have any questions about church safety stuff, shoot us an email or message us on Facebook, because a lot of times, folks will do that, but we're available and definitely interested in helping you guys and helping give best practice, or if there's, resources that we can get you, we have partnerships with various folks that do a great job and would love to help you as well. So
I wanted to throw a quick comment on that. I was in another church safety group and just happened to see a guy in a conversation talking about, you've got the elite, if you will, of security, of church safety, of law enforcement, of military. And a lot of times the people in the trenches, they feel like they don't get heard. And I commented and I said, that's one of the things I love about this group is, okay, we're veterans. I don't consider myself a subject matter expert, but I consider myself a very enthusiastic amateur. And I've got some experience, and I can oftentimes spot it doesn't look right. But you and I and the Michaels are working. Jim, Simon, different people that are partnering with us, and Forever Vigilant, Chris. We're trying to bridge the gap between the people in the trenches doing the fighting and the people, if you will, that are working on the grand strategy. And that is one of the things that most excites me about this. And I haven't really had a chance to talk to you about this, James. My ADD-addled brain just suddenly remembered it. But it's one of those things that we have an ability to, people can ask questions here, whether in private messaging or during a video or whatever, that literally can become topics. Mm-hmm. And there's people in the trenches that are over here. You'll see me turn over here and make a comment or click like on something, that they will make a comment that sparks an entire different part of a conversation or will become part of something later. And there's not a lot of input like that in other parts of the world. In other things, the guy that walks the beat as a security guard oftentimes is not able to talk directly to the people that are planning the grand strategy of an entire industry. And that is something about the ministry that is church safety. And I think that's a unique place that God has put James, myself, and the Michaels to be able to make this happen. So I'm excited about where God's taking it over.
Yeah, for sure. We have that opportunity, and God has definitely blessed us with that. And a lot of times we get the question, well, what exactly do you guys do, and what's the point of the church safety guys? And just to reiterate that, if you're watching this, our mission, our vision is to equip, train, and disciple. Amen. So how do we best do that? And, our target market is the 94% of churches in the U.S. that are under 500 in membership. So, how do we do that? We do that by continuing to do broadcasts like this. And we have folks that, believe in that and step in and help us sponsor it. We've talked in the past about different folks, and we've partnered with different folks that are willing and available to provide discounts on training. We've talked to folks that have literally said, we'll provide free training. So, if you're a small church, or if you're a church that's trying to get a safety team started, please reach out to us. We are a nonprofit organization. We're still working on the 501c3 part, which is ongoing. But at the same time, we are developing friendships and partnerships with folks that are like-minded in this ministry. And it's always a thrill to me, because I look back, to a year ago. We were talking about this earlier, and I if you had told me a year ago that some of the folks that I know and I talk to almost on a daily basis, I would be talking, a year ago, I'd be like, that's kind of crazy. But
well, and just to jump back into that and come back, I was talking to this guy in this other group, and that's part of what he was talking about. Is like, do you feel like the people listen to you that are at the top of this, the guys that are training people, that are at the 10,000 foot level? And I'm like, yeah, actually, I was like, we have conversations with people, the Chris and the Jim and the Simon, that they've trained in this, they're steeped in this, they've done this for 20 years or 25 years or 30 years or whatever. And, I've had people tell me, hey, I've actually mentioned your story in my class, or I liked how you put that, or I feel like this lets us reach people in a way we couldn't reach people. You guys can identify with people in maybe ways we can't. And so it's a huge honor to get to be part of this thing. And like you'd said, if you'd have told me 2 years ago, I probably would have run screaming if you'd have told me where this was headed. But it's amazing what God has brought us into, and it's exciting. And who knows where it's going to lead, but I think it's going to be a good thing. And even just a year back, we didn't have 2,500 people in here. And I mean, we've had weeks that over 100 people have joined this group a week. You think about that. It wasn't that long ago that it was 200 people in this group, right? So
for sure. Practical, as Mike says, practical. All right. Well, we will let you go. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. Guys, make sure you go over to our Facebook page, the Church Safety Guys. If you have time, like that, and then go to YouTube and subscribe to our channel. And we'll talk to you next week. God bless. Keep your powder dry. And we'll talk to you then. Take care, guys.
See you.